Okay, so I'll quickly show you how to do a little bit of shading practice. All right. Right. So in this worksheet here, it's very good to have a go at practicing your shading because it gets you to try and work in very different ways. All right. So we'll do a bit of an introduction. Okay. So the first one, what I want you to do is I just want you to shade, okay, from one side to the other. Alright, so if you note where I'm holding my pencil, it's about halfway up. Okay, that will allow you to apply enough pressure, but whilst also using a bit more of the pencil lead. So if you're just going to shade with the point, you're not going to get quite a smooth finish. Whereas if you shade with the side a little bit more, then you'll get a bit more smooth finish. Alright, so box number 1. Okay, I just want you to go from dark, pressing on quite hard, not too hard, to light. And I want you to keep your shading in one direction. Okay, for now. Alright, now it doesn't matter if you go whichever side you want to work on. Okay, and as you can see, what I am doing is I'm starting to go over the shading, okay, just to make it nice and even. So see here, there's a bit of a kind of step if you want. So I'm not pressing on too hard, but what I am doing is I'm just pressing on with a nice medium pressure just to try and go over it. All right, a lot of people seem to think that you need to press on quite hard. Okay, you don't. If you keep going over the same mark over and over again, then if with the same pressure, eventually it's going to get a bit darker because you're applying more graphite to that paper. Okay, so as you move across the box, and all you do is you just take the pressure off. So now I'm barely touching the page, and eventually I am barely touching the page. I'm just kind of dusting the pencil onto the paper. Okay, that's step number 1. All right, you can still see that there's a few little steps here, so I can just go over, okay, and correct that if I want to. All right, and you can make that really smooth just by continuing to practice it. Keys with shading is be a perfectionist, definitely. Okay, right, look at my pencil. Can you see here where it's just worn away a little bit? Okay, what I now need to do is I need to apply that worn away edge to that box. If I'm going to work on that as a bit of a step by step, I want to get rid of some steps, then I need to look at where that worn away bit is and I apply that straight away. I use that side of the pencil to then add a bit more shading into it. If you spin your pencil around and you use the point, you're going to get a completely different mark, and that's what messes your pencil shading up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is you're going to draw a very faint diagonal line. It can go that way or that way, doesn't matter. Okay, and you're going to start from one side of the box, one corner, sorry, and this time, instead of shading in a straight line up and down, what you're going to do is you're going to start fanning out your shading. And again, you're going to go from dark to light. So as you move into this corner and the other corner, you've got to take the pressure off your pencil. Okay. So you can see just starting to change direction of your shading a little bit more now. Okay, and then you do exactly the same. Once you've got it nice and smooth, do exactly the same on the other side. And if you notice, I didn't swing pencil around, I put it back on the paper with the worn out side down. That way I get exactly the same mark. So look how I'm fanning out the lines. Even changing direction a little bit here as well. And because I've used the worn out edge and I'm pressing on lightly, you shouldn't be able to see any steps. Okay, if you want to add more contrast, then you can start pressing on a little bit harder in the darker bits. Okay, so for this one, okay, you're going to alternate your shading. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my pencil. I'm going to use the point. Okay, spin my pencil around. And all I'm going to do now, okay, is we're doing the vertical on one side, and then we're going to swap to horizontal. Now what you've got to pay attention to here is that even though you're swapping direction of the pencil marks, you've still got to make it look like you haven't. You've still got to make it look nice and smooth. Okay, because you're going to get lighter as you go to one side. Okay, so you can see changing direction again. Okay, and I'll do the same here. Making sure that you can't see where I've changed direction. Always remembering I've got to be lighter on one side. What I'd like to do is, as you're doing this, try not to smudge with your finger. Okay, you can start smudging with your finger when you're confident with shading without smudging. This is where you need to try and perfect your shading first. Okay, so try not to smudge with your pencil, sorry, with your finger or rubber. Okay, and now we're going to go in the opposite direction with the next one. Dark on one side, exactly the same. Try and keep a little bit more inside of the lines than I am. Taking the pressure off as you get over to one side. Okay. And then again, change direction. You need to change direction. You could, I guess if there's a cheat, you could cheat and not change direction, but the whole purpose of this exercise is to try and practice your shading whilst also changing direction. So even though you are shading in lots of different directions, you still need to make it nice and smooth. Okay, you can make it even smoother than I have at the moment. Okay, and then exactly the same. Obviously it gets a little bit quicker the smaller your squares. So what you're going to have to do now is you're going to have to add a little bit more contrast, because you're going to have to show it goes from dark to light a lot quicker, but without stepping it. We shouldn't see too much of a graduation. You know, a lot less space to try and go from light to dark. Okay, and then go back over just to make sure that you haven't got any steps. For ease and speed of this video, I am rushing this through, but what I want you to try and do is to try and get your shading as perfect as you can. Okay, you can see here that there's quite a few steps. Okay, so you just want to go over it and make it as smooth as you can. Okay, if you have gone a bit too dark like I have there, then you can of course rub out. You're just not using it as a shading tool, not blending. Okay, but be careful when you rub out, because it alters the paper. Okay, it rubs away some of the grain of the paper, and so therefore your pencil works in a completely different way. Alright, so apologies that there's quite a few steps in there. Okay, for this demonstration, but at least you get an idea. All right, and this last one, okay, is for this tutorial anyway. Is this time you're going to go dark on one side and light on the other, so you're not alternating from dark to light this time. I'll try and make this one a bit smoother for you. If you're working on a hard surface like I am, it is a bit harder. But you could do with a few sheets of paper maybe underneath your paper. All right, that creates a softer surface to work on, and it helps you shading. I'm just applying a very, very simple pressure onto it to get it a bit more even than the previous one. Okay, so just note how many times I do go over it to make it smoother. And again, every time I take my pencil off the paper, I'm making sure that I'm applying it in exactly the same position. Okay, this one, again, you're going to go dark. Now, you could be tempted to just go dark to all the way light, okay, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to shade each one individually, because that's how it works when you're trying to shade light reflections in a bottle, for example, or a bike frame, and so on and so forth. And I should really be able to tell between each shape. So it might be that you have to just press a little bit harder around the edge and then gradually build the light in. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So what I'm doing is I need to be able to see these different lines. So I've just almost outlined them, but I've kind of feathered them into the background. Okay, so look here. Just going to press on a little bit harder on that line and then feather it into the shape, just so that we can see a difference between these lines. Okay, I don't need to do it on that bit. And then we do it the same. So pressing a bit harder on the edge. Just straighten that line out a bit. Okay, pressing harder around the edge so that we can see a definition, but without pressing on too hard, because we've still got to go to dark, from dark to light. I'm just trying to make sure that this is a bit smoother. So I'm just going over where I can see steps. Okay, and lastly, the one in the middle. Remembering to go from dark to light. And that was quite easy because you just go up and down. Okay, and all I'll do now is just double check I've got all of that. Got it as smooth as I can with the camera in the way. Need to define this one a little bit more, so I'll just go over that, make sure that I'm getting rid of some of these marks. And as I say, you just keep on going over it until you are happy that you have got it with very few steps. It's got to graduate from dark to light very gradually. So at this point I am barely pressing on at all. Okay, and when you're happy that you've got it as even as you possibly can do, okay, you'll stop there. You can go back and you can try and smooth out some of the more complicated ones. Go back, use a rubber if you want to, just to try and create less steps. Okay, and you can spend quite a lot of time doing that, so you've just got to try and make sure it's nice and even. Okay, next session I will show you how to do these ones at the bottom. Okay, I'll do another tutorial and let you see how you get on with these top first 4. Okay, bye bye.